Okay, so this is how to play Jhin like a challenger in Season 13. Jhin is one of the most well-rounded marksmen in the game. His innate synergy with crit items means you will always have a decent late game with him, despite being a more burst-oriented champion. However, the burst damage coming from Jhin's passive gives him lots of agency when it matters most, during the lane phase. We are looking at the Korean pro player Mystic, by the way, who has been Challenger for 4 consecutive seasons. I hope that's high elo enough for you, because I unironically got backlash for featuring an EUNE Challenger player in my Twitch guide. I mean, seriously, come on. Anyway, if you have constructive criticism on which players you want me to feature, then that's always welcome, and a link to Mystic's profile is in the video description as usual. Jhin is definitely a champion with a lot of skill expression, as you will get the most out of his early game when you can force your trading patterns upon your opponents. Grenade bounces and fourth shots are fairly predictable, but a good Jhin player like Mystic here will use Jhin's patterns to bait the enemy, throwing them off their rhythm. Taking full advantage of this, Mystic actually manages to outtrade his lane opponents 1 versus 2. Being left alone in the bot lane by your support is naturally the most difficult lane state you can have, but as you can see, Jhin still has options here. Unsurprisingly enough, however, you will have even more options when your team starts playing around you, since Jhin doesn't merely come with great burst damage and kill pressure. No, he is also one of the very few AD carries with hard crowd control in their kit, and coupled with Jin's range, that turns him into a true playmaker. The key to mastering Jin's W is to hold it until the root is guaranteed. Dodging raw W is easy, but dodging it when Jhin uses the spell for follow-up engage is impossible. There is no worse feeling than wasting W and then realizing it is on cooldown when you see a setup for a guaranteed hit. But there is one thing Jin's range should already tell you. Jhin excels at mid to long range distances and must act preemptively to stop enemies from running him down. A general rule of thumb is that you want to kite with your auto attacks as much as possible so you can make use of your phenomenal movement speed. Only when it would be too risky to do that should you finally resort to casting Jin's ultimate. As you can probably tell, in this game right here, the enemies are quite fed already, giving Mystic a really tough time. But the most important thing for you in a situation like this is to remain level-headed. You play your lane like you're supposed to, so you can then hopefully make up for your allies' mistakes in the mid-game. And while we watch Mystic shove this wave, keep in mind that if you want to have educational league content like this in your personal feed, all you need to do is click the subscribe button. Legendary. But yeah, this will be a problem. A massive problem. But what can Jhin really do to deal with a hyper-fed enemy master Yi? To be exact, it is not just Yi. All enemy champions are fed, and this is what the gold graph looks like right now. However, unlike many other AD carries, Jhin is by no means useless here. Sure, it is a difficult position, but by adamantly staying out of Yi's range and kiting the rest of his team, you can still have a winning impact in this match. It's a tough balance to strike, but you can afford to take some risks when you have your mobility cooldowns to fall back on in case anything goes wrong. So in this game state, Jin's team of course has no way to deny the enemy's Baron. Your only hope here is that the enemy gets greedy and overextends. Logically, when you are behind, your best bet is always to give your opponents as many opportunities to make mistakes as possible and cross your fingers. But Jhin is simply made for this, as his burst damage perfectly fits the duration of your teammates' crowd control. Run away when under pressure, but fire your massive bullet when the enemy is stunned. No other AD carry can take advantage of short time frames like Jhin can. And now with all that extra gold, Jhin was able to get some big item upgrades for even bigger burst damage. However, items on AD carries never change your game plan. You merely do what you've already been doing, just better, but you are by no means now able to do whatever you want. Yeah, dealing damage is nice, but Mystic still has to start running away immediately as soon as Master Yi even remotely appears on his screen. Always play safe on AD carry. By the way, could we take a second to talk about how Jhin's mortal enemies are control wards of all things? This is seriously messed up game design. At least they no longer have 5 hit points, but I still think Jhin's passive should make him deal double damage to wards to keep things fair. But another argument you often hear is that Jhin would also be very weak against tanks. However, this is simply not true. Yes, Jhin's ultimate is weak against high HP targets, but it is Jhin's ultimate only. When you simply auto-attack the enemy frontline instead, they just melt like butter. That Renekton dropped so fast. Don't ever underestimate Jhin's auto-attacks, they're massive. But yeah, you've probably already realized that Jhin only fights when Master Yi is nowhere near him. It is the only way in a game like this, since Yi would just kill you instantly. You just have to be patient and wait until he is distracted. Again, it is a fine line between staying safe and outright not participating in fights at all. Mystic has to still try and be useful for the team, and if Master Yi stays hidden until he can ambush him, so be it. As long as he takes Akali with him here, the play is fine. In any case, some risks are definitely worth taking, and at the end of the day, many plays come down to risk-reward management. Here, for example, blue team have vision on the enemy who are all gathered in the mid lane, so they try and sneak Baron since it is control warded. And they even get away with it before red team realizes what's happening. It was essentially a do-or-die situation, as leaving every objective for the enemy is equal to just passively losing the game. Again, when behind, you have to give the enemy opportunities to make mistakes. And speaking of which, take note how careful Mystic's positioning still was when facing Master Yi, despite outnumbering him. So this is how you can carry with Jhin even when you get an unlucky team, but I still have to show you Jhin's optimal runes and items, since they are too an essential piece of the puzzle. Oh wait, what's that? Oh no, Jhin, watch out, it's Master Yi with a folding chair! Never mind, good old tunnel vision on ADC, so Jhin's team can now end the game. So Jhin's optimal rune page used by Challenger Jhin mains is Fleet Footwork, Presence of Mind, Legend Bloodline and Coup de Grace, with Celerity and Gathering Storm secondary. Jhin is all about kiting and repositioning in between auto attacks, so Fleet Footwork is his most reliable keystone. It is optimal for the lane phase in particular, since it allows you to more easily force Jhin's trading patterns upon the opponent. You can, for example, get down to your third shot, but then wait for the Energize trigger. If you now fire your third shot on a minion, you can use the fleet movement speed to run at the enemy with your fourth shot at the ready. In addition to small tricks like this one, Jhin's enormous bonus attack damage from his passive allows him to get really big healing values with the footwork, since the rune scales with AD. Presence of Mind is chosen because a lot of Jhin's damage actually comes from his spells. You have to use the downtime in between auto attacks to cast Q and W for optimal DPS during fights, so running out of mana would be really bad for you. Legend Bloodline is a good pick as it rounds out your sustain in tandem with the footwork, allowing you to skip lifesteal in your item build. This item flexibility is really important on Jhin, as you are about to see. Coup de Grace has perfect synergy with Jhin's 4th shot execute damage, making it even more rewarding to attack enemies who are on low health. It is a great rune for the early game in particular, and many Challenger Jhin players pick it, but Mystic actually went for Cut Down instead. This one is better late game in general, and obviously quite useful against tanks, but it ultimately comes down to personal preference. Gathering Storm is a great rune on Jhin for late game scaling, since in the late game you'll have a bunch of crit and attack speed items too, effectively multiplying the value from this rune's bonus AD. Celerity is a perfect match with the footwork, but also amplifies all the movement speed you will get from your items and Jhin's passive. It is the most common choice in Challenger, but Mystic in fact did not take it and instead went for Nimbus Cloak. It is a viable pick, since while it's true that you will have weaker kiting and slower rotations overall, you will have much more movement speed during all-in fights with this one. Celerity is certainly easier to use well, however. Jhin's item build is really straightforward and simple to understand, but still gives you room for flexibility. The most popular and successful variant is rushing Swifties and Gale Force to then make use of the Infinity Edge buff, as it can now be bought as a second crit item already. Jhin is one of the best Gale Force users in the entire game. Not only does he greatly value the added mobility, since he himself doesn't have any dashes in his kit, but the damage on this item is also excellent for Jhin. The reason for this is twofold. On the one hand, Gale Force scales with bonus AD, and since Jhin gets more bonus AD than anyone else thanks to his passive, his Gale Force activations will be the deadliest on the Rift. On the other hand though, Jhin is designed to execute low health targets with his 4th shot bonus missing HP damage, and Gale Force also perfectly synergizes with this concept. The damage from its active gets stronger versus low HP enemies as well, which means Jhin gets even better at what he wants to be doing anyway. The items that follow are all just designed to maximize Jhin's damage at any given point in the game. Raw AD with crit payoff and armor penetration, then followed by utility, more movement speed and attack speed, which on Jhin multiplies all the bonus AD you already have. However, while it is true that this build order maximizes your damage output, it is also completely viable to get Rapid Fire Cannon as early as second item on this champion. In certain matchups, you just have to be able to keep your distance so you don't just get deleted by enemy assassins or Master Yis. Rapid Fire Cannon enables you to do that, but still provides useful damage for your team due to its range bonus. But yeah, choosing which items you need when exactly is part of your skill expression as a Jhin player, even though the build looks relatively straightforward. Yet the most difficult aspect of playing Jhin is not knowing which items to buy, but rather when you need to be where on which parts of the map so you have the biggest impact. However, you can learn everything about this topic by clicking the link to my AD Carry macro guide, which should be on your screen right there.